agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Michael Baranowski, a professor of political science at Northern Kentucky University. I'm joined by my co-host today, political scientist Ryan Teaton.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me.
Yeah, hey, Ryan. So I really enjoy doing the first episode with you in the driver's seat. I don't think you drove us in any ditches, and so that's always a good thing. It's on the straight and narrow down that highway, and I am looking forward to you taking the wheel again for this midweek supporters show. And we, like I said, on the weekend show, we have a lot to get into, and so I will let you get us kicked off.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we get to start with what's being referred to as the Great Bud Light Debacle of 2023. I mean, how can we not love that, right? So this is a discussion generally on Bud Light, but more on Dylan Mulvaney, and unfortunately a little Kid Rock in there too. So on April 1st, Bud Light sent Dylan Mulvaney, who is a transgender social media influencer, a influencer package, which translates to glorified swag. They send them out and hope to get on everybody's YouTube channels, basically. This one also, though, celebrated her one-year anniversary of coming out. Bud Light had provided also several custom cans with illustrations of her face to Dylan. They were included in the package. And she posted a singular pic saying, "Happy March Madness" to all of her followers and holding one of the custom cans as influencers are wont to do. Although I must note that she does not actually like Bud Light.
Good for her.
Immediately, yeah. Following up from that, 5,600 articles came out within the next 2 days in right-wing publications. And then we also have things like Kid Rock firing a rifle at Bud Light cases. I honestly, Mike, didn't know he was still alive. Travis Tritt has also banned the Budweiser brand from his tour. Quote, he said, "When I toured in the 90s, Anheuser-Busch was American-owned. Now it is a great American company that sold out to Europeans and became unrecognizable to the American consumer." Unquote. So, yeah, if Bud Light could only work on improving their brand, maybe. And Marjorie Taylor Thomas has publicly switched to Coors. She will be missed. But lastly, and probably most making me a bit irate on this one, is Ben Shapiro, who is kind of Kardashianly famous for being famous. And he said, quote, "Well, folks, our culture has now decided that men are women and women are men, and you must be forced to consume products that say so. I understand that Bud Light is piss water masquerading as beer, so I guess, it's like a trans beer." Okay, this is, in my opinion, that's hate speech. I don't see how you could see it any other way. And if that is the one piece of feedback you get as an individual trying to determine any part of your identity, that's terrible. So Budweiser, believe it or not, had many national events that were planned during Pride Month that they canceled, citing fear for their employees' safety at said events. Now, after this kind of backlash in those articles, Anheuser-Busch stock dropped 5% or nearly $6 billion, to which CEO Brendan Whitworth issued a statement. This has about as much clarity to me, Mike, as the Trump indictment in New York. It didn't say a whole lot and just made everybody mad. He states, quote, "We never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people. We are in the business of bringing people together over a beer. Moving forward, I will continue to work tirelessly to bring great beers to consumers across the nation." So my first thing is, what the hell? I mean, that said nothing eloquently. However, this seemed to assuage the fears of the stockholders. And so the stocks rose after that statement, as well as Don Jr. telling people they needed to end the boycott. When interviewed, an Arkansas convenience owner said, quote, "A lot of people are fired up about it. They're never drinking Bud Light again, yada, yada, yada. But they'll be drinking them in a month as soon as the news cycle quits." He also mentioned that he found it fascinating that Bud Light, who will purposefully design cans of your NFL nemesis, your MLB nemesis, your any of those. But we mentioned this, you don't hate another company if you're in New Orleans and they put out cans that have the Falcon on them. You don't drink those cans, of course, but, you drink the ones that have the Saints on them. However, all this seems to build on anti-trans sentiment that has arisen from examinations of bathroom facilities to athletic participation, to drag queen stories to accusations of woke mafia. So what I'm going to ask first, Mike, is this just the result of a slow news cycle? Is this just no one left over to target with hatred, or bigger issues and takeaways for the listeners? Go for it. Yeah, go for it. Try there.
I think it's, kind of that right-wing virtue signaling sort of thing. I mean, you mentioned Ben Shapiro. I'll mention Tucker Carlson, who started his segment on it, saying Bud Light released a commemorative can celebrating a man dressed up as a woman. And right there in one sentence, very impressive, two highly misleading statements, right? Because number one, it's not a commemorative can. It's not commemorative can means something that people can buy in the market, maybe limited. That wasn't that. As you pointed out, it was part of a special influencer package. And number two, Mulvaney is not a man dressed up as a woman. That's a cross-dresser. Mulvaney is transgender. She's on hormone therapy. She's had multiple facial surgeries to conform her appearance with her gender identity. So saying that she's a man dressed up as a woman, it might not rise to the level of Ben Shapiro hate speech, but it sure seems, at the very least, inaccurate and dismissive to me, and I've got a problem with that. So, I mean, that's what I said. The Travis Tritt thing. Maybe he was like, "Hey, I'm still alive. Come to my tour. There won't be any Bud Light." That I think it's just publicity sort of things, and yeah, just hate really sells. With certain groups are uncomfortable with transgender folks, and so I think that's a big part of it. These right-wing influencers just trying to push their message, and they don't really care. I don't know that Tucker Carlson actually believes any of the garbage he spews out every day, but it works. It gets him an audience, and hey, that's what matters. I mean, this is a man who said, right, I passionately hate Donald Trump in private, but more than happy to pal around with him in public because the man has no integrity. He just wants audience. And that's, I think, what a lot of this is.
Before I get back on that question, do you remember Tucker Carlson came to Northern Kentucky University and debated,
oh wow,
Steve Forbes or Al Franken, one of those two? Do you remember? And
God, yeah.
And at that time, he put forth some very constitutionalist views in his debate, but nothing that seemed to the level of rhetoric that is being utilized right now. And I just say that as kind of amazement because we've seen him before and then we've seen him after. And so it's so different in that. But going back to your comment too, I think that my fear is giving this a name. It'll blow over and people. Well, if it's even one person who has what we see on the news, a girl turned into a driveway to turn around and the guy got off the porch and fired 2 shots that killed her. They didn't even get out of their car. A 6-year-old's basketball rolled across the grass into a guy's yard and he ran at him with a pistol and shot the 6-year-old and the parents. I mean, I would say that it's not, okay, well, it's overreaction. It's these people who, they put for Kid Rock. I mean, come on. But if even one person listens to that and then it builds on what is kind of an anti-trans fanaticism that seems easy to grab onto as almost maybe gay marriage did back in the day, where it's a threat to our society and our families. And so I think that's maybe more of my concern, that someone who is trans or any of identification walks down a street and could get a negative comment on the basis of all this garbage that's being thrown out into the stratosphere. And that negative comment could impact that person in such a way that could cause them to harm themselves. We don't need to be doing that. It's like, why are we talking about it if we don't need to talk about it? Why are we doing that? So
yeah, there is a more serious, I almost call it legitimate argument from I guess you could say, the right on this. And I'll bring it up. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it's important to bring it up. And this is, some people legitimately believe that, to start with, gender dysmorphia is a real thing. It's a real psychological problem. This idea of when your biological gender doesn't match your gender identity. And there are people on the right who say, will agree, yeah, this is a problem. And certainly Mulvaney has said, she said, my God, I've just struggled. I've had I've had real issues, understandably so. But many people on the right seem to believe, well, the way to address it is to help people suffering from this to become more comfortable with their biological gender, and in making influencer deals and doing other things by promoting people who are transitioning, that actually makes things potentially worse and just feeds into this condition, essentially. Whereas people on the left would say maybe that's true in some cases, but there are some people who actually can be really helped by transitioning, and not by just saying, well, you can't, dress as another gender or have these surgeries, that sort of thing. And so, again, I don't agree with that argument, really, certainly not to the extent that people on the right are making it. And the Tucker Carlsons of the world are certainly not making that sort of sophisticated argument. But I'll say that I've seen in some more kind of higher end conservative journals that argument made, and it's not just a specious argument. It's an argument that at least deserves some consideration, I think.
I believe the discussion has to be, however, about the comfortability of everybody in their skin, in part just people being upset about something on a can. And the reason I say that is we see these cyclically, let me get it out, cyclically with other companies as well. And Bud Light's response is, we're just going to ride it out. But, Chick-fil-A, there was an incredible amount of backlash for them in the past. Hobby Lobby, Target, when they went to bathrooms that allowed people to pick with their identification. Nike with Colin Kaepernick. When there were female M&Ms, everybody went crazy. The Dixie Chicks. So, I think we see that marketing in some cases doesn't really work out, but it gets mixed into, and maybe this is it, Mike, it gets mixed into these things that seem to be core to who we are as people and threatens them. And that's where they kind of rise to the other level. I don't know. Does this Bud Light ad have any kind of stayability, or is it just, is it done? Is there going to be a backlash that's long lasting for Budweiser or Bud Light? Or is the backlash only create a hatred towards, again, another group? And builds on other parts.
That's what I think, the latter thing. I agree with you. I think it doesn't really, we've seen that boycotts tend not to be very effective, but yeah, doing anything that creates that atmosphere of, because there, I think, are a lot more people out there who hold the view of, well, these people are weird and freaks and we should shun them, as opposed to, well, I have a more nuanced view and these people need to be treated with care and compassion, but we don't want to encourage this in other folks because I believe this leads them down a bad road. That's not the predominant view. At least that's not my sense. And I would maybe disagree with that. I would disagree with that view, but I would at least feel that to be, I guess, what I would call a truly Christian, decent sort of view, even if I disagreed with it, as opposed to this hate-filled sort of thing that you see from, like you mentioned, with Ben Shapiro and other things we've seen on Twitter and other social media about Mulvaney being a freak and these sort of things. And that, to me, people who can do that and call themselves Christians, that just is dumbfounding to me.
And I think the question, another follow-up that this leads to perfectly, is what does it say about media coverage, though? Because we have just discussed Fox News and Dominion priorly in another episode, but we talked about the vitriolic rhetoric, and if we thought that it would tone down. And I have to tell you, Mike, when I'm watching, DirecTV has a news channel that shows all four news channels at once. You get BBC, Fox, CNN, and I think the Weather Channel. And so you can see how the stories vary. And I take so many snapshots with my phone of subtitles that they give to their segments that are so horrifically offensive that that if you said them out loud, you would be arrested for, because it would be hate speech. And so what does this say about the media grabbing onto this? And I got another question for you then. Is this the issue for 2024? Is the issue for 2024 emerging that it is save our families because of the threat of the alphabet crew, that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah. I think that's, pretty clearly Ron DeSantis is riding that as hard as he can. And I think that definitely is a big part of the playbook from people who, and then again, I blame the powerful and the influential a lot more than the average person, especially the older average person who grew up in an era where the culture was very different, and it can be difficult to change. But when you have people who you respect and admire who are telling you these vicious lies and things, well, then it just makes it easier for you to say, no, I guess how things were when I was growing up is the right way, and I don't have to accept any of these people. I can just call them freaks and so forth, because all these other people I respect are doing that. And so these are the people I just find truly reprehensible, because I really think in many cases they know better, but they just don't give a damn, and they're willing to sacrifice the mental health and in some cases the lives of transgender and other people who may not have a traditional sexual identity for their own power and fame. And that to me is just utterly disgusting.
And Mike, the knee jerk on the local level is what is concerning to me. And Tanya and I were at a Denny's, so I admit we were in Denny's.
We'll talk about that later. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, right. But there was a family behind us that was discussing why they will never ever drink Bud Light. Because and they used some language that wasn't exactly appropriate to anything that Dylan was undergoing or accurate to biology. And then on the way out, we had a discussion with them on a totally different subject about fish that you could pull off the pier and how that would come and go. And in sharing our discussions about fish and then family and them learning about our family and the diversity therein, et cetera, they started to have different perspectives, and not necessarily changing their perspective. That's not what I'm looking for, or whatever even suggests. Just they're aware of that it may not be the same situation for them as in understanding as everybody else is. And I thought that was incredibly forward, that we were getting to those important discussions we need to get to. But my problem is when it's on 30 million screens at night with subtitles that are purely inciting violence against those who are weird and different, that it becomes incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And especially, like you mentioned, going back to Make America Great Again. Okay, when's the great? Are we going back to the 60s? I think there's a significant population that would disagree
Yeah.
with that being awesome. Or the 70s, you see what I'm saying? And so it's a frustration that I'm worried that not kids, but individuals like everybody younger than us as kids, of course, but people like Dylan will suffer because of other people's ignorance brought on by menial issues like this.
We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo or @politicsguys or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.